In Kavango, you're a conservation expert working to restore balance to the ecosystems. You're going to play across 3 rounds as conservationist, building ecosystems that will last. Using card drafting, you'll aim to create healthy food chains, starting with basic producers, then adding small and large animals. You'll also earn money to invest in habitat protection, anti-poaching efforts, and climate protections. At the end of the game, you'll earn points for the animals you've protected, for achieving specific objectives, and for winning awards. Let's get started with setup. Each player starts with a landscape board, a protection board that looks like this, your colored tokens and markers, and make sure you place your money cubes in the bank tray. You can then decide which token you would like to use. Each color gives you the option of 2 different animals. For this particular playthrough, I will go ahead and pick the rhino, and I will place that on the 0 space. You can return the meeple that you didn't use back to your colored player box. You'll also have these high scoring tokens that you can set aside just in case you need them for future gameplay. You're also gonna have 4 completion task check marks. Set these aside as well. Now we're gonna prepare the different decks in the game. If you see this dice, don't worry, you're gonna use that for solo play, so you can just set that aside for now. One thing I love about this game is how well thought out and organized everything is. So we have this great bank system here that actually holds all of your player pieces, but you also have these different bags that you can put player pieces in as well. I just prefer to keep them right here. The other thing that is really well thought out in this game are these deck holders. And on the front, it's actually going to detail the different phases of the game and how to create the different decks based on player count. So that is really handy, and I love how organized and easy to table this makes the game. Part of setup, we are gonna shuffle each of these decks separately. So we're gonna have our action cards here. We are going to have our A deck, B deck, and C deck. So shuffle each of those independently and then go ahead and place them back in the holder. Now we have a really nice card holder here as well, and this is gonna hold our goal cards as well as our research cards by round. So each round, we play in 3 rounds, we're gonna put out 4 new research cards, and this is going to kind of emulate what it's like for those that are running a conservation like this one that we're playing in Kavango, how there's different focuses in order to earn money. So when you think you're pleasing those that are donating funds to your conservation, come to find out they actually want you to focus on something else. And I really love the immersive way they let you experience that as a player, how you can be pursuing one thing and maybe the next year or the next round in this case, your donors are wanting you to focus on something completely different. So you have to completely change course. That's a really great way that they've integrated that feeling into this game. So just like our decks of species and action cards, we are going to go ahead and shuffle the goal cards as well as each round of the game, 1, 2, and 3 research cards. Now the rewilding cards here at the end don't actually need to be shuffled because they're all the same. So you can just leave those as they are. There's a few other cards I want to show you that you can play with. The first thing I want to show you are these different conservation expert cards or specialists that you can play with during the game. I wouldn't recommend playing with these your first, second, or even third game, but I think once you have a really good idea of how all the animal and species interact with one another, that's a really nice time to bring in these asymmetric abilities to your game. And be sure to check out the rule book because they actually give you complexity levels. So when I'm playing this with my kids or even solo, there's certain cards that I gravitate towards because they're either a little easier or a little bit more complex and add some more strategic thinking to my gameplay. Since this is just a tutorial, I just wanted to at least show you these, but I'm gonna go ahead and skip over this part, but typically you would just deal 1 to each player and then they're gonna read their text at the bottom. These are not secret, so everyone will know kind of what that special ability is that your asymmetric character has. The other optional thing that you can do for each player is to give each player a goal card. This is going to be a goal card that only they can see and that they can try to attain. This is an incredible way to get points, but it can be quite difficult if you don't have access to the right cards. So if you choose to play with the goal cards, you would simply deal 1 to each player and they would keep this face down in front of them. they would score this at the end of the game. Now, each player is also going to start out with some money cubes. These cubes represent money in the game, and if you're playing your first game, they recommend at the beginner level that you start with 3. If you feel like you are at an intermediate level, you would start with 2, and then of course, an expert level, congratulations, you just start with 1 money cube. So for this example, we'll go ahead and start with 3. So each player is gonna take their 3 money cubes and just set them right above their board. We'll determine how we wanna spin these throughout gameplay. Another thing to consider with these money cubes is they can be used kind of as a handicap. So if you're playing with somebody that has played this game several times, or maybe you're teaching it and you want to maybe start with a little bit of a deficit, you can give each player different amounts of these kind of based on their skill level. Now, the next thing we're gonna do for player setup is we're actually gonna get to add some of these level C cards to our player board, and they're actually gonna be placed over here in our sanctuary. Now, for a multiplayer game, you're first gonna wanna determine a first player, and then you're gonna hand out these hand markers in clockwise order. Then you can do what I refer to as a snake draft, and basically players are going to select 1 card in turn order, then a second card in reverse order. These 2 cards are then gonna go into their sanctuary, which is these 3 spaces here on the right side of your player board. So for the sake of this setup video, I'm just gonna go ahead and deal us 2 face up, but typically you would get the opportunity to draft these. Now at this point, we're ready to start. So Kavango is played over 3 rounds. At the start of every round, for instance, this is our first round, we are going to grab our level 1 research cards. We should have already shuffled these at the start of the game, and we're gonna go ahead and reveal 4 over here in our research area. These are basically going to give us goals throughout the game, and anytime throughout the game, we can secure these goals using our tokens here that are little check marks to show that we've completed that to a certain level and get points and income, so that in turn, we can level up different requirements we may have for scoring or for animal placement into our reserve. At the beginning of round 2 and 3, we're gonna reveal new research cards that are going to be a little bit more challenging and complex and kind of grow with the game. The next thing we're gonna do at the beginning of every round, like I said, you can refer to the box here or to one of the player aids, and we're gonna go ahead and construct our hands of cards. I'm gonna go ahead and set this up as a 1-player game because that's typically how I like to play, but this would also work for a 2-player game. So looking at my reference card here, I can see what I need to do per player count and what types of cards I need. For this one, each hand of cards is going to get 3 action cards, followed by 6 of the level A cards, and then 6 of the level B cards. Since I'm gonna play solo for this particular example, I'm just gonna go ahead and mark these decks so I know which is which. So each round, we're gonna get 10 turns, and there's 4 different phases. First, you're gonna choose a card. All players are going to do this at the same time. Once all players have picked their card, they're then going to play their card. This simply means they're gonna reveal and put their card where it belongs based on the type. So for instance, I have a tree here, and I'm gonna tuck that under my tree icon at the top of my board. Now I should also mention that these boards are asymmetric. This particular one that I picked is going to start with grass and a fish icon, but I don't have any tree or invertebrate icons yet. Although I did just add this tree, so I technically have 1 tree now. After players have actually placed their card, next we can look at research and investing. So this means I can look over here at the different tasks that are out for level 1, and I can decide if I have completed any of those or if I want to go ahead and expedite income for any of these objectives that are out here currently. The other thing I can do is actually allocate my money. Now you're probably saying, what do you mean and why would you want to do that? Well, there's 3 different places that I can spend money to actually build up my reserve that allows me to place cards into my reserve. 2 of the icons are here. This one is our habitat protection, and this one is poaching protection. So different cards, for example, this fruit bat, are wanting me to be at least at a level 1 habitat protection in order to play this into my reserve. So if I want to, I can go ahead and level up my level 1 habitat protection. I can also go ahead and level up my poaching protection. And with my last cube, I can actually come over here and also add and contribute to the climate protection. Now, this is important for several reasons. Not only so we can play particular species into our reserve, but also at the end of the game, there are going to be awards for biodiversity, meaning that you have 11 species types in your reserve, for contributing 8 million or 8 or more cubes to the climate award, or for reaching level 4 on both your habitat and poaching protection, which is here. Now, climate protection, we all benefit from. The way that this board is set up is we're actually just looking at the player count level that we are in. So for a 1 or 2 player game, we're just looking at these bottom 2 rows. If we had a 3 player, we're gonna add this additional row here, and 4 or 5 player, you can kind of see how those rows add up. Now, the interesting thing about this, I'm just gonna leave this here to show the 1 or 2 player section, is you could have another player contributing. And the nice thing is that all players gain the benefits of these levels. So if I'm trying to play an animal into my reserve that needs at least a level 1 climate protection, I am able to do that. Even though I've only contributed the 1 cube so far, this is a community effort. Whereas these habitat and poaching protection are very personal to your reserve. So you have to be the only one contributing to these levels. And if you don't contribute to it, you're not gonna be able to bring those specific level of animals into your reserve. Now, something to note here, when you are leveling these up, you do have to fully fill in the requirement. So for instance, I can't just have 1 cube left over and just do halfway to level 2 habitat protection. I need to actually have both cubes in my possession in order to fully level up that section. I hope that makes sense, but you have to fully level up each section and have that money ready to contribute to these areas. You cannot do it just halfway or as you have the money. Climate protection, on the other hand, you can contribute just what you want. So I could just put 1 cube down and that would be fine, but that is not the case for the habitat and poaching protection. So the last thing we're gonna do at the end of our turn is actually pass our hand of cards to the next player, because this is a drafting game after all. Now, this does work a little bit differently in the solo mode, and I will show you that on my playthrough in the next few weeks. But for now, this is where we would pass and our turn would repeat in the same manner, but this time with our next deck. We would look through again, we would decide what we would like to add into our Tableau, we would reveal, and then we would have the opportunity again to do the research or investment, deciding how to spend our money, and the game would repeat until everyone has had 10 turns. Now, after 10 turns, any cards remaining in the decks are going to be put into a collaborative discard pile, and we're gonna go ahead and move to the next round. So this gives you a good idea of what your player area may look like at the end of round 1, but let's quickly look at each type of card. So for the action cards, when you choose to play one of these, you're just gonna follow the directions on the card, and they're actually going to be discarded after you play them. Obviously, you're not gonna be putting them into your reserve, but these are gonna give you different things, like potentially rewilding cards, which you can also always spend 4 cubes or 4 money in order to bring into your reserve, or they may just give you more income. Like for instance, the wildlife fund here does give you 2 cubes from the bank right into your supply. We can then take a look at level A cards. Now, these are typically producer cards. For these particular producer cards, you are gonna slot them up above your player board just like this into different columns based on type. Now let's take a look at level B cards. These animal cards have food and sometimes protection requirements, so make sure to check all of the icons that you see listed on the card. If you do meet the required icons, for instance, this mongoose, I need to have level 1 climate protection, which our 2-player game has achieved that, as well as level 1 habitat protection. I also need to have 2 fish icons, which I do. So I can immediately place this into my reserve. Now, if you can't play an animal card into your reserve, no problem. That's why you have this sanctuary section here, here, I can store a card, and later when I've achieved those goals, I can immediately move it into my reserve at that point. Lastly, let's take a look at level C. These often require food and other species in your reserve, like a reptile or fish icon. So they're gonna be a little bit more challenging to place into your reserve, but don't worry, with the right strategy, you can do it. Now keep in mind, if you ever want to discard a card from your hand or sanctuary, you can also do that and gain 1 money cube. Let's take a look at some of these research cards just to give you an idea of what these look like and how they interact with the reserve you're building. Now you can only claim each research card 1 time per the round. So you're gonna wanna be strategic when you do that. If you do it too soon, you might miss out on more money and points, whereas if you wait, you might be able to acquire the higher point and money values for these. For instance, this one allows us to place our token on if we have animals that require at least level 1 protection, climate, or habitat. On my board here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 animals that have these level 1 icons. So if I were to claim this, I would get 3 money and 3 points. That way, on a subsequent turn, I could go ahead and allocate that money to hopefully level up these different areas of my reserve so I can have the ability to play more animals with more restrictions into my reserve. Now, we also have ones like this where you are looking for a number of small animals, which will have this particular icon, or you may have animals that are smaller than 0 to 50 centimeters. This can be found directly on the card here. It's a little hard to see, but hopefully you can see that picking up. There's also going to be weight-based cards that will come into that same type of reward card as well. So at the end of the game, which is after those 3 rounds, players are going to score points from animals in their reserve. Okay, this number up here in the corner is actually the points that are going to be awarded to you for those animals. And if you're playing with goal cards, that's also a great way to get points as well. And once you add up those points, as well as the final reward cards that are out for round 3, the player with the most points wins. And that's a quick overview of how to play Kavango.